Most wars have clear beginnings and tidy endings, but not this one, the Korean War. Is a war without a victory parade, a war without closure, a war many people barely remember. Yet it shaped the modern world more than almost any other conflict of the 20th century. Today, we're traveling back to a frozen peninsula in 1950 to uncover how a civil war almost ignited World War III. Welcome to the Korean War, the war everyone forgot. To understand how Korea became a battlefield, we need to rewind to 1945. Japan had ruled Korea for 35 years. When World War II ended, Japan surrendered, and the victorious Allies needed to dismantle its empire. So, in a rushed decision made in Washington, two American officers drew a line across a map. The 38th parallel, the Soviets would take the north. The Americans would take the south. Neither side planned on splitting Korea permanently. But as the Cold War hardened, that invisible line froze into a border. North Korea became a hardline communist state under Kim Il-sung, while South Korea, led by Syngman Rhee, struggled with political chaos and American support. Two leaders, two ideologies, one divided nation. And both sides believed they were the rightful rulers of all Korea. A collision was inevitable. On June 25, 1950, North Korean troops backed by Soviet equipment and strategy are stormed across the 38th parallel with over 75,000 soldiers. The South Korean forces collapsed within days. Cities fell one after another. The North Koreans were unstoppable. The United States, fearing the spread of communism and remembering the failure to stop Hitler early, made a decision. They would fight, but they wouldn't fight alone. In an unprecedented move, the United Nations authorized military intervention. Troops from 16 countries, including Britain, Canada, Australia, Turkey, and Ethiopia, joined the effort. The Korean War had become a global war. By August 1950, UN and South Korean forces were pushed back into a tiny corner of the peninsula, the Pusan perimeter. If that perimeter fell, the war was over, outnumbered, outgunned, low on ammunition, food, and hope. But they held. For 6 brutal weeks, the perimeter became a wall the North Koreans simply could not break. It was one of the biggest last-stand moments in modern military history. Still, they couldn't win the war by staying on defense. And that's when General Douglas MacArthur unveiled one of the boldest and riskiest plans of his career. On September 15, 1950, UN forces launched an amphibious invasion behind enemy lines at Incheon, a city with massive tides, narrow channels, and nearly impossible landing conditions. It should have failed, but it didn't. It worked brilliantly. The North Korean army, caught completely off guard, collapsed. Seoul was recaptured. Their supply lines were cut. They retreated in chaos. Within weeks, UN forces pushed them all the way back to the 38th parallel. But MacArthur didn't stop there. He wanted to end communism in Korea permanently. So the UN advanced north, toward the border of China. And that's when a new, terrifying army entered the war. As UN forces approached the Yalu River, the border with China, Beijing issued repeated warnings, "Do not come closer." MacArthur ignored them. Then, on a freezing night in late November 1950, 300,000 Chinese troops launched a devastating surprise attack. The UN forces were completely overwhelmed. In temperatures dropping to -30°C, brutal fighting erupted in the mountains and valleys of North Korea. The most legendary battle was the Chosin Reservoir, where a surrounded UN division outnumbered 10-1 fought its way out through Chinese lines. It wasn't a retreat, they said, it was advancing in a different direction, but the truth. It was a desperate escape through hell. By early 1951, UN forces were pushed back below the 38th parallel. The war had become a bloody stalemate. From 1951 to 1953, the war entered its most frustrating phase, trench warfare. Yes, trench warfare, in the age of jets, tanks, and atomic bombs. Both sides dug in along the 38th parallel, creating a front line that barely moved for 2 years. Battles like Heartbreak Ridge and Pork Chop Hill featured brutal, hand-to-hand combat for hills that, frankly, didn't matter. Thousands died for terrain that was often abandoned days later. Meanwhile, peace talks dragged on endlessly, slowed by issues like prisoner exchanges and political demands. The war wasn't moving, but people kept dying. Finally, on July 27, 1953, an armistice was signed. Not a peace treaty, just an agreement to stop shooting. The border remained almost exactly where it started, the 38th parallel. Nearly 5 million people died, cities were flattened. Families were shattered forever, and yet, nothing had been truly resolved. Today, North and South Korea remain technically still at war. Their border, the DMZ, is one of the most heavily fortified places on Earth. The Korean War never really ended, it just went silent. So why do so many people forget the Korean War? Some say it happened too soon after World War II. Some say it ended without a victory or a clear story. Others say it was overshadowed by Vietnam later on. But here's the truth. The Korean War shaped the Cold War. It created alliances that still exist today. It split a nation that still longs for reunification. And it turned Korea into one of the most tense flashpoints on Earth. This war may be forgotten. But its consequences are not. If history teaches us anything, it's that forgotten wars aren't truly forgotten. They live on in borders, in politics, in memories, in families, and in the quiet moments between nations that were once at war. Thank you for watching. If you want more deep dive history videos like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell.